My name is Martin Skancke. I'm the chair of the PRI board. It's a pleasure to welcome you to this, the first plenary session today. Now, and a special welcome to those of you who are here for the first time. Yesterday, we spoke about the issue of systemic risks, or systemic issues, and we argued that responsible investing must go beyond just looking at the relationship between investors and investee companies. We must look at some of the systemic issues that are relevant for investors and for risk and return over the longer term. So the issue that we're addressing this morning about market microstructure really goes to the heart of this. Now, it may seem like a boring topic, but is really, really central to investors. So I'll try to briefly outline why I think this is an important issue that investors should be paying attention to. So most of you have probably, sometime in your life, slaved over a finance textbook. And in that textbook, you'll probably find an investor trying to maximize return given some sort of risk aversion, maximizing utility. Now, that seems like a very sort of simple and plausible story, but what we're maybe not aware of is that we're making a lot of assumptions. We're making some assumptions about the nature of the investor, him or herself. We're assuming implicitly that this person is investing his or her own money. But we know that most people who work in financial markets are not investing their own money, they're investing someone else's money. And their incentives are determined by the contract that they're working under. So we need to understand that asset owner, investment manager relationship and the nature of those contracts. But another thing that we're just assuming is that there is a market to trade in. We're just assuming that we can buy a share or sell a bond and optimize our portfolio. And in most textbooks, this can happen without any costs, without any friction, and with perfect information. So that's obviously very far from the realities of the actual market. So as some of you will know, in my previous life, I was responsible for management of the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund and through the financial crisis. So obviously, during the financial crisis, there were huge changes in the value of our equity portfolio, but we were always able to trade. In our fixed income portfolio, we had lots of assets that we had sort of assumed were low or medium risk type assets. During the financial crisis, these were assets that we were unable to trade. And that was because the large investment banks were market makers for these assets. And during the financial crisis, they just stopped picking up the phone. Or maybe the person who used to pick up the phone had been fired. So that market just ceased to exist. So there is an important lesson in this, which is that risk for an investor is not just a characteristic of the assets, but it is also a characteristic of the market. It reflects characteristics of the markets in which those assets are traded. And so this brings us really to the issue of the microstructure of markets, how markets are put together, how they work. Now, there has been a revolution over the last few years, driven by technological change, driven by regulatory change, and it's changed the business model of stock exchanges. So stock exchanges today are very, very different from the stock exchanges of a few years back and the stock exchanges that sort of implicitly existed in our old finance textbooks. So stock exchanges have become profit-maximizing entities in their own right. And investors have to think about what the implications of that is for them. So the old stock exchanges were sort of quasi-public service institutions, and they did a lot of good things, which they financed from their trading income. They maintained sort of the quality of the listing. They made sure in many instances, stock exchanges monitored insider trading, for instance. But what happened to stock exchanges was similar to the experience that many retail stores now have. You want to buy some really complicated sporting equipment. You go to the store, you get great help from a very knowledgeable salesperson. You find out what you want to buy, then you sneak behind the aisle, pick up your smartphone, and buy it cheaper on the internet. Right? So the business model of the high-end retailer is undercut because they're selling a service to you, and they're trying to get paid for that service through trading, but you find that you can trade cheaper somewhere else. And much the same has happened to stock exchanges. So we need to understand as investors what that means. Now, yesterday at an event at the London Stock Exchange, we launched a model guidance under the Sustainable Stock Exchange Initiative, a model guidance to help stock exchanges set reporting requirements on ESG for the companies that are listed. So that, I think, is an important work. But we need to think about what the role of stock exchanges will be going forward, given all of the change that's happening in that area. And I especially want to give this message to the asset owners among you. Asset owners are typically far removed from the day-to-day operations of financial markets because they have given money to an investment manager to invest, and the investment manager, or even the brokers of the investment managers, are the ones that are in the market. So asset owners tend to look at the operations of the marketplace as something fairly abstract and something that is far removed from their daily concerns. But you have to realize that if markets are inefficient, you will bear the cost of that in the end. So you really have to care about these issues. So that's hopefully a motivation for why this is important. And we have today Brad Katsuyama with us. And Brad really is, I would say, not an observer of the change, but a creator of change in this market. He's a CEO, president, and co-founder of IEX, a stock market that's dedicated to investor protection. And he'll talk about his experiences in building up IEX and his views on the changing nature of the market. I think this will be highly relevant for our broader work in understanding the changing nature of markets. So I'm really happy that you could be with us, and I'm looking forward to your presentation. Welcome, Brad.